Welcome back, bourbon friends. Today's an exciting day. We're going to get into actually trying some bourbon, and we're going to talk about the different categories of bourbon, and we're going to start the journey of seeing which category is our favorite and which category is our least favorite. So stick around, things are going to get real. All right, folks, today is the beginning of developing your palate. But before we do that, I want to just talk about what we got going on here. The first thing I want to talk about is these little flavor bottles, it's what I call them. They have different whiskeys in them, different bourbons. They're numbered on the bottom. I don't know what those numbers are. I have poured them earlier and have since forgotten which one is which. This is what we call a Glencairn glass. This is typically what you'll see people drink bourbon neat in. It's fused at the top, or it comes in coned at the top, which allows you to really get a good nose on it when you're nosing a bourbon or trying to get the aromas of the bourbon. The Glencairn that I use is this one. I get it on Amazon. They're pretty cheap. You can buy them in packs. Um, it's just it's a good weight. It's a good thickness of glass. I haven't broken one. Um, and so what we'll be doing is we're going to be pouring this into here, and then we're going to be just tasting them. And while we're tasting them, I'll talk about kind of what's going on in my mind. Now, the reason we have three is because these each represent a different category of bourbon. And I want to talk to you about these categories right now. The first one is a traditional bourbon. They're all straight bourbons, which means that they went through the process that we talked about earlier. Uh, the the 1964 congressional resolution that states that it has to be 51% corn. It has to be aged in charred new oak barrels. It has to be distilled at no higher than 160 proof. Has to go into the barrels uh, no higher than 126 proof, I believe. It cannot be bottled any less than 80 proof. And the only thing you can add to this is water. You can't put any flavor additives, you can't put any color additives or anything else. Now, the other thing that makes this a straight bourbon is it has to be aged at least 2 years. Has to be aged at least 2 years. So in a traditional bourbon, you're going to have 51% corn, at least 51%. Then the next ingredient is going to be rye, and the rye percentage is going to be anywhere between 10 and 15%. And the remainder of the mash bill is going to be malted barley. So that's your traditional uh, mash bill, and it's going to have its own unique flavors because it is a traditional whiskey. Now, the second one that we're going to talk about is what we call a wheated bourbon. You often hear of them called wheaters. Um, it's going to have a much sweeter taste. Some say it's a little bit smoother. Um, and what is the distinction of a wheater is that you have the 51% corn, but instead of the second ingredient being rye, it's going to be wheat. So a wheater is going to have usually around 15 to 30% wheat, and then that third ingredient is going to be malted barley. The third category is what we call a high rye. A high rye is just that. It's 51% corn. It's going to be 20 to 30, 35% rye, and which in a traditional bourbon, it's like 10 to 15, but in a high rye, it's like 20 to 35. So they really almost double the rye amount. And then you have your malted barley. So what a high rye is going to give you on the flavor notes is more. It's going to be more spicy. You're going to get those baking notes. You're going to get like peppers, cinnamon, clove, things like that. Sometimes even a little mint. Um, so those are the three categories. You've got traditional, you've got wheated, and you got high rye. Now, don't mistake that with rye whiskey. Rye whiskey is rye whiskey. It is not a bourbon. It has to be a high rye bourbon. It has to be a traditional bourbon with a high rye recipe in it. Okay, so that could confuse people, and I don't want to do that. Rye whiskey is its own separate category. So let's look at what I've chosen as our sample bourbons. The first one is going to be a Knob Creek 9, and this is going to represent our traditional bourbon category. It's got a 75% corn mash bill. It's got 13% rye, so it's not a high rye, and it's got rye, so it's not a wheated. So it's 75% corn, 13% rye, and then 12% ish malted barley. And so this is going to be our traditional bourbon. The next one is going to be our wheated bourbon, and I've picked Rebel 10 year. This is a single barrel Rebel 10 year, and its mash bill is 69% corn. And then the second ingredient is 20% wheat. So that makes it a wheater. And then it's got 10 to 12% malted barley. Then we go to our high rye. And what I picked was Old Forester 1910. And it's got a 72% corn with a 18% rye. So it's getting up there. It's not crazy high, but it's also got a 10% barley. All right, so let's get to pouring. We'll get the first one here, and I'm going 3/4 of an ounce. We got to keep the whiskey with the bottle. And I'm also going to clean out this so that we don't cross contaminate our flavors. This is exciting, guys. This is really going to show you the difference. Drinking them in a blind, side by side. I'm a little shaky. I had a lot of coffee earlier this morning. Now, the other thing you have to think about is when you're drinking bourbon, you have to realize what is it that I've ate today? Where is my palate at the moment? If I like to smoke a pipe, and so if I've smoked a pipe that day, that residual tobacco in my mouth is going to affect the bourbon. And in fact, sometimes I like to drink bourbon with my pipe. It really opens up some flavors. So that's why we do it multiple days, so that our palate is coming at the bourbon from different directions. All right, so there is our 3 different bourbons. Now, at this point, it's not super important to distinguish the nosing, the the profiles that you can smell. Um, it's more we're looking for taste, okay? But you can smell them. Mm. And you can smell the difference. They're very unique, to their own. None of them are off-putting. None of them are super ethanol-y. They don't burn my nose because I'm not like taking a bunch in. I'm just very gently allowing the scents to permeate my nose. The other thing you can do when you're nosing is you can leave your mouth open a little bit and go through the nose and the mouth at the same time. So here we go. I'll start here and work my way over. Not super important to try and identify what you're tasting. Just kind of get a sense of was that was that satisfactory? Was that pleasant? Um, Kind of pay attention to what it's doing in your mouth. Is it lingering? Um, is it oily? Is it dry? You're going to find that sometimes you like an oily whiskey. I love an oily whiskey, um, but some people don't like that feel in their mouth. Wow, a lot more different. I mean, there's a noticeable difference. Um, Now you might be wondering, am I tasting a little bit of that when I drink that because I drank that first? Maybe, but I think the nuances are so different that um, you'll pick that up, and then we'll we'll alter how we go about these so that we're not always doing the same routine. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've mixed these up. I've drank from each one, tried to drink in different orders. Um, I think next time I will incorporate some water, um, just because on the finish, I think they were getting muddled together, and I wanna be able to taste the finish. The finish is after you've drank the whiskey, what is sitting on the back of your throat, what is going on inside your mouth. It's that bit of flavor that just stays with you for quite a while. So I placed these in order. I could not discern between second and third place, but I definitely had a first place. Now, let's look and see what I picked for first place. First place, I actually picked the high rye, and that surprises me because I didn't know um, I would do that. So I would say this one has more flavor than this one. Um, so if I had to edge it out, I would say this came in second, and that is um, the Knob Creek, and then um, the one that I didn't really care for which was the Weeder, came in last. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log this down. So in first, second, and third, in first place was the high rye. In second place was the traditional, and in third place was the Weeder. Now this is just the beginning. So I hope this helped. I hope this excites you. I hope this creates in you a desire to really dive into the world of bourbon. And yeah, let's just keep going. I'll see you next time. We'll try these same bottles and see if we get the same results.